Hey there, I'm Mark from Spectrum Pulse, and today it's a big one, the newest project from Seat Headrest The Scholars. So I was a little surprised by how excited I was for a new Seat Headrest album, and that makes both more and less sense than one might expect. Because on the one hand, this is a band that had two indie rock slam dunks with Teens of Denial and, well, Twin Fantasy, the latter of which I didn't cover in 2018 with the re-recording, but I can still acknowledge it's a really damn good album. Maybe it was how 2020's Making a Door Less Open kind of lived up to its title and driving away so many of the newfound fans with the bad synths and the drum machines, or hell, maybe it's how it's been 9 years since a new great album from Will Toledo after long COVID made touring a living hell for him in the early 2020s. It's hard to set any expectations. Either way, a quick re-listen to those great 2010s albums was enough to rekindle some excitement for me, especially when the reviews for The Scholars look kind of promising, and what we got is a self-produced, 70-minute, self-described rock opera stuffed with angst, furries, and metatext, where if you don't get the attached libretto with the album, you're gonna be hopelessly lost. And even with it, there's no guarantee it's all working, especially when you get away from some of the tighter, self-contained songs on the front half to the sprawling 10-minute plus suites on the back half. And there is a part of me that's tempted to get caught up in the tangled attempt at narrative here and really go in. A college of furries where both students and professors are embroiled in scandal amidst the darker reality-bending forces at the core, with little in the way of resolution or focus, where a character might exist for a single song and never come back, or they persist for the entire album, like the band leader Chanticleer, who is a reference to old folklore around pride juxtaposed with Artemis the Purple Fox, and said band leader is then driven mad or is killed and then comes back, or was never really dead the entire time and was let off with a warning. And it's hard to escape the feel of very clumsy fan fiction, where there's a lot of focus on defining a single scene for an original character, but a lot less focus on plot or stakes or a world with consistent internal logic, as much of it references existing American cities or modern religion. Or if it does exist, it's spread across a slew of other Seat Headrest songs or projects from other band members. When Ethan Ives takes over the majority of lead singing on Reality, much of the song directly references his album from his band Toy Bastard, and while that will work for some diehard fans, I absolutely get the appeal as a Marianas Trench fan. When it's paired with songs 10-minute plus long, with Planet Desperation running for at nearly 19, it's gonna test your patience, especially when there's interplay between the characters you're only gonna notice if you're reading the lyrics, which if they're gonna let Ives sing a lot more, where hopefully he can improve that David Bowie impression he's working on, why not set up the contrast between members earlier, help drive some dynamism in the vocals? But like so much of the blend of snarled classic rock spanning the Cars to the Who to the Beach Boys, glam rock, and now prog rock from which the band draws their influence, if you're hung up on the narrative, you might be missing the larger forest for the trees. Because like with 21 Pilots and everything built up around Trench, The Scholars sets up its myth-making to largely be metatext, referencing the experience of being in Seat Headrest and the underlying angst that Will Toledo and the band might be facing. The swapping of narrators, occasionally switching the singer playing the same character mid-song, the highly stylized theatricality that nevertheless feels intentionally blurry, never quite detached from our own world, the fact that on Reality they just break the fourth wall altogether for Will Toledo as unknown to sing directly to the audience and reference Seat Headrest songs directly, and thus from there, yeah, the album can still feel bloated and scattered, but the internal through line of themes begins to coalesce. A college representing institutions responsible for passing along knowledge outside of ossified or judgmental strictures, but said institutions can also be corrupted or exploitative in their own right when pulled from the pursuit of that knowledge, grappling with a whole lot of religious trauma and the concealment of one's actual identity, starting an indie rock band where said pretensions have to meet the reality and grime of the road, and, as one expects, a lot of generational angst between children and their parents. Probably the most consistent element translating from an album like Teens in Denial to now. But what gets kind of interesting is that Will Toledo identifies the most common point of breakdown between any of these relationships, and that's probably miscommunication, or a lack of communication altogether, be it between the queer-coded Mallory on Lady Gay Approximate, and yes, of course that's a Bob Dylan reference to a song that's also about the refusal to talk to each other, or on Equals, which is probably one of the more nuanced explorations of cancel culture, when two characters largely talk past each other instead of finding any sort of clarity or forgiveness for any fault that may have been committed. And thus it makes sense that the band puts on a pedestal the institutions, the scholars that preserve the knowledge and teach, in comparison with the animalistic animal brain to not care for others, just look out for oneself and survival, or the hyperbolic anti-intellectualism of those who would raid to destroy such knowledge. Also deeply earnest and at its core self-affirming and optimistic, where there is a lot of charm and desperate desire for that community. It's infectious. That being said, an album like this that is drenched in metaphor and broad religious iconography and meta-commentary and goddamn furries kind of avoids some socio-political insight, and that's a bit odd given the backdrop of the past several years in the United States weighing in on a lot of those subjects, even furries. And it's notable that Car Seat Headrest just don't really take that next step to go deeper, mostly because when you dig into coding and themes, the album is profoundly institutionalist and kind of Enlightenment era liberal within its own world. That these issues and intolerance can be talked out, that we can all meet in the middle, that the institution might have dark secrets or processes, but that's a fault of bad administrators or actors, not anything systemic. That animal instinct should be subsumed or can be subsumed between proper altruistic structures, that there's literally a song about cancel culture where the actual crime is largely ignored in favor of talking about the feelings of those experiencing within it, and by the end amidst a bunch of Christ-like imagery, it's not a victory won by actually beating your enemy, but by surviving within the structure, kind of outthinking them, rather than reflecting any broader change to the system that might have led to these problems in the first place. Not saying it's bad, it's an observation of themes and coding, and when you combine it with the self-affirming metatext of writing one's own way out, well, I could make the Hamilton parallel, but that might even be a little too loaded. But if you're not looking to get into the weeds with this album and are just looking for the music, kind of like with Hamilton, which Will Toledo here produced himself, well, outside of structural issues on the back half, where it's hard to escape the feeling that some tighter hooks or stronger crescendos might have saved more of those songs, yeah, Car Seat Headrest really delivered. There's some great indie rock here. The run across the first half is ridiculously strong. I love the slow, pattering build of CCF I'm Gonna Stay With You until the fuzzier guitars erupted, with the keyboards and horns just way better blended this time. A formula they buffed to searing jaunty gloss with the Catastrophe. Good luck with that, man. Devereaux is probably the most conventional mid-tempo indie rock burner of the album, but it's still loaded with some striking vocal harmonies. Lady Gay Approximately kind of nails that mid to late 60s minor key acoustic folk, and the misty synths floating around the stalking groove of Equals, it nails that uneasy tension before going for this pure anthemic swing that honestly reminds me of mid-70s Fleetwood Mac in the Gallop. Hell, even though the songs on the back half of the project are clumsily paced and structured, and the ending is overpoweringly saccharine, they normally nail at least one element that feels starkly memorable. The grinding tinkle of dread on Gethsemane honestly fares the best as that jagged crescendo kicks into this snarling two-step. I really like the sizzling rage of the first third of Planet Desperation, where Will Toledo plays the anti-college attackers, and then the bassy swagger of the final third's Death March with a killer hook there. Shame the rest of the song, the transitions are really clunky, and the vocals sound a lot more touched up than you would like from this sort of indie rock group before the pitch down filters show up and really weren't needed. And while I think Reality is probably the weakest track here, I do appreciate how the production will subtly accentuate how the fourth wall will break down as it just ebbs back to the most intimate moment on the entire album, really. But to tie it all together, It feels like a reintroduction to car seat headrest, but mostly for the die-hard fans, cause good lord, this is not an easy jump on point. The first 5 songs might be, then the back half will make it really difficult. Or conversely, if you're a progressive rock fan, you'll probably wind up a little underwhelmed by the elongated compositions that can be a bit short on virtuoso flair. But at the same time, it's both more and less than what it actually appears. It's densely confusing and daunting on the surface, until you realize how much of it works way better thematically, where the earnestness has a ton of actual charm, but then you wish they could actually claw themselves out of the in-jokes, the Easter eggs, all the references, and really just the bloat in order to accentuate their biggest strengths, or deepen some of the ideas they already have. It's pretty far from their best in that view, but it's also a swerve back in the right direction that leaves the lanes open for the future. And while I don't expect Will Toledo to be as actively prolific as he was in the early 2010s with now a full band, yeah, I'm interested to hear more. In short, Scholars is worth the study. I'm not going to stick around for the extra credit, but I got what I wanted out of the class. You probably will too. Check it out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. I guarantee this is going to attract some level of discourse or argument. And hey, comments down there below. Have fun. Where do you think this fits in with the rest of Car Seat Headrest's catalog? I bet the opinions are going to be all over the place. Beyond that though, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if y'all want to get involved in helping support the channel, get albums on my schedule, or hell, just yell at me in my Discord, YouTube memberships and Patreon are right over there. Don't feel obligated, tough times, believe me, but the option's available. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.